Hi everybody. I decided today would be a soap making day. Last time I've made large batches of soap was probably about 5 years ago. I used to make soap regularly and sold about 30 different varieties, but now I just make soap for myself and a few family members. But the batch I made last time was about 5 years ago, and it was a large batch and it lasted 5 years, but we are down to the dregs of my homemade soap. So it's time to make new. I had to buy all new soap making oils because my oils were so old that I had moved from house to house to house until I got here in Kentucky. Soap making is a kind of a complicated, chemistry-laden work. It takes, you can't have soap unless you mix some type of acid and a base. And then it goes through a process called saponification once you add a caustic lye. And people often say, oh, I don't want a lye soap. Well, it's almost impossible to make a true bar soap without some type of lye, either sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. I use sodium hydroxide. It makes a solid bar. Potassium hydroxide is used to make liquid soap. So the first thing I need to do, though, is to prepare my soap molds. Now, this is a mold that makes 2 logs. You can see the inside of this. And a log, I probably get a dozen bars, maybe 10 to 12 bars out of a log. And I'm going to be making a double batch today, which is about 88 ounces of soap making oils plus the lye and the water. But the first thing I need to do is prepare it, because once I start heating up the different oils together, the saponification has to happen, and everything is moving really quick. I mean, within a minute or so, that soap starts to harden and you've got to get it poured quickly. So the first thing I need to do is to fix my forms. This set comes with, it all comes apart so that I can pack it flat. And it's heat resistant, HDPE, I think, plastic. And it comes with a metal form, a wooden form. And the first thing I need to do is to wrap it so that I can line the inside of my well. And then when the soap is cured, I can pull it out and unwrap it. So I use freezer paper and wrap it like a Christmas gift. Leave one end open. I put a little tag with a little handle of the duct tape on the bottom so I can pull it out. And the reason is because once you wrap this, there's a suction in here and it's almost impossible to get this form out. So I've got it all wrapped, and you wrap it really tightly. This is the wooden form, and it goes straight into there. Now, once the soap is solid, you could unscrew all of these screws and pull it all apart and take it apart that way. But I find it easier just to create handles out of the leftover freezer paper. So I spend some time actually cutting the freezer paper so that I can then flatten it down. And I want to tape it off so that it doesn't get in the way when I pour the soap, because pouring the soap can be a little sloppy. So I literally take these corners and create, handles so that I can pull it out when it's ready. It takes some time and it's a little tedious to get everything prepared in advance, but it's really necessary because, like I said, once you start heating up your oils, and I do a cold process method, once you start heating up your oils, it moves quickly. So everything has to be ready and in place. I'm going to finish wrapping this, and then after lunch, I'm going to get everything prepared to start creating the actual recipe. When I taught soap making classes, I have a base oil recipe I would give as part of the class. And I'm thinking about maybe if there's an interest in my area, teaching them again out of my home studio. Once the soap has been ready to pour, you pour it in the molds. It's going to take 5 to 6 weeks to cure. So then you set it off in a corner, you leave it alone, and 6 weeks later you come back and it's soap. So more than likely I will do that and come back and finish the end of this video once it's all been cured. Thanks. Ready to get started making soap. First wanted to talk a little bit about what saponification is. And actually, to saponify oils, basically it's the chemical reaction that happens between mixing the lye or the lye water and oils. And you have to have that chemical reaction in order to create soap. There's really no getting around it. Now there's an old wives' tale that about when soap was somehow discovered or invented, where women were washing clothes, beating them against rocks at the water's edge, and upriver men were cleaning their hunt, cleaning out the fat of the meat that they had caught, cooking it. That fat was dribbling out, rolling down the hill, mixed and mingled with the water as the women were beating, and suddenly things started sudsing. How that was created or discovered, I have no idea. But I do know that soap has to be made by mixing lye with oils or some type of a base. So the first thing that, right now I have all my oils measured out. I have a pot full of coconut oil and palm kernel oil, which comes in both kind of a semi-solid state. I have refined grade A olive oil measured out. I have sunflower seed oil measured out. I'm also going to use castor oil, and I'm going to use jojoba. The reason I selected these, I spent about 5 years when I was making soap. Don't want to turn that on. When I was making soap regularly, creating a recipe, until I found my personal signature recipe that I used to sell. And it's a Bath and Body shampoo, total body bar. So you can, I have all these oils in it that are really good for the skin, very moisturizing for the skin, and oils that are really strong for the hair. I have sunflower seed oil, castor oil, and jojoba oil are all very good for both the skin and the hair. Oils have certain properties, certain fatty acids, and not every oil is the same. So for instance, coconut oil and palm kernel oil are drying to the skin, but they make a really strong, stable lather. Olive oil is very weak lather. If you've ever had strong Castile soap, which is primarily olive oil, it has to have at least 50% olive oil in it to be called a Castile soap, you'll notice the soap is a little slimy and it doesn't lather very well. And it's because olive oil is very good for the skin. In fact, I use about 45% olive oil in my recipe, but it doesn't have a stable lather. It's a very weak lather. And the same thing goes for many oils that are very good for the skin, very moisturizing. So it's difficult to find that balance between oils that are drying for the skin, oils that are moisturizing for the skin, which ones have the kind of properties that I want in my body bar. I have made more luxury bars that has the butters in it, the shea butter and cocoa butter and lovely recipe, but I don't like using that for my hair because I don't want the butters in my hair. I want something that's going to create a really strong, stable lather because I love the lather. And it's got good properties that are specifically for the hair and the body and moisturizing. I want to be able to use one bar, guys especially, my husband loves it, to be able to have one bar of soap and use it from head to toe, and you don't have to transport shampoos and conditioners and all of that stuff with you when you're traveling on an airplane. Now, let me talk about conditioners a little bit, because people wonder, oh, I don't condition my hair when I use this soap. You really don't need conditioners for the hair if you're using natural soaps for your hair. Commercially prepared soap that you often find in the grocery stores are stripped of all the moisturizing properties because those companies can refine those properties, put them in lotions, and make a lot more money for them in the lotion and in the conditioner. So it's stripping out the natural oils out of your hair, and then you're buying conditioner to put oils back into your hair. When you first start using natural soaps for shampoo, you might notice those first couple of shampoos, your hair is a little maybe greasy. It's not quite sure what's happening. It's not, it starts to produce this overabundance of oils, natural oils, because suddenly you're not putting the oil in the hair, and so it's working a little bit harder. But in a very short period of time, you will, your hair will even out. The natural oils that are produced normally in the hair is really all you need for conditioning. So with my shampoo bar, I've never used, I haven't bought conditioner in a long time, unless there's a specific formulated shampoo that my salon stylist has talked me into buying, and I'll buy a set and use it for a while. But primarily I use the body bar, which is a head to toe, one size fits all. Now I'm going to be making 2 batches of soap today. Probably one will be lavender Lang Lang soap because my husband loves that scent, and the other one will be unscented because my mom is very sensitive to fragrances, and she's been dying for us, me to make an unscented batch so that I can ship some to her. So I'm going to do that. But I'm going to be making several batches over the next couple of weeks. I mean, heck, while we're stuck at home, I might as well, and start drying them out. So if anybody's interested in any, I probably will wind up having some for sale because I'll be making far more soap than we'll be using. So the first thing, I have all my soap oils measured out. The first thing, though, that I like to do when I start making soap is get the soap mold already cleaned, lined, and I've got that ready to go. I think I showed that earlier in the video. And then I measure out all my oils, and they're always measured by weight, not by volume. I measure out the oils. I measure out the amount of water that the recipe needs to use. Now I'm making a 5-pound batch of soap batch, which means 5 pounds of oil, and that's not counting the couple of pounds of water that I use. So I've got all of that measured, and that's all measured out and ready. I've got the water measured. I like to measure ice water for that reason. For the reason is because sodium hydroxide, when it's mixed with water, creates a chemical reaction in and of itself, and within seconds the temperature goes from whatever the ambient temperature is of the ice water up to near boiling. And it's all about the reaction. Then it also puts out fumes that can be difficult. Now, it's a caustic substance. You don't want to get it on your hands at all. You'll sometimes, if little bits hit your hand, in a few minutes you'll start noticing a burn, or you start messing with your skin and you see it turning red. Wear gloves. Always wear gloves when you're messing with sodium hydroxide. So I used to get ground sodium hydroxide, but this is flakes. I don't know if you can see that very well. And I got this from Crafter's Choice. Years ago, I used to buy my oils from Columbus Foods and have them shipped. And then I lived in Louisiana, and I would go to the oil refineries that were creating different chemicals. And there was one locally that was creating sodium hydroxide, and I would buy them by the big bag full. But it's been a number of years since I've purchased oils, and I decided to go out and buy all new oils so that I didn't grab anything that was rancid. And Crafter's Choice is what I wound up using, or Wholesale Supplies Plus is, I think, the same company. So that comes in that. Because I mix lye with water, it creates a chemical reaction. There's fumes that come off, a gas that's expelled into the air. It usually happens the first couple minutes while you're stirring your sodium hydroxide flakes and dissolving them in the water. After that, it's fine. I like to do that outside. So I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna mix my sodium hydroxide. Well, actually, first I need to weigh it. So I'm gonna do that here. And then to mix them, I'm gonna go outside and mix it, and hopefully you'll be able to see the reaction that takes place. So for this particular recipe, I am using 12.82 ounces of 12.18, I'm sorry, ounces of lye. Now, I like to super fat my soap. Every oil has a saponification value. In order to create a soap making recipe, you have to know what that sap value is of that particular oil. And what that means is when you add, for instance, when you add the sodium hydroxide to that oil, 100% of the oil is turned into something new because of saponification. There's no oil left over. It's all been eaten up by the lye. So each oil has a different sap value. So I had to decide which oils I'm going to be using. I'm using 7 different oils in this particular soap recipe. Each one has a sap value. I have to figure out how much oil I'm going to use in each in the recipe, what the sap value is of each oil, add those sap values together, figure out how much I want to then take away. So for instance, in my recipe, which this is my signature recipe that I've been, I perfected about 10 years ago. There is, I'm gonna super fat 7%. So I figure out how much lye I need to be 100%, and that is 12.82 ounces of lye for 0% super fat. But I want more moisturizing oils retained in the soap. So I will take away 7% of that lye and not use it. That way, as the saponification is taking place, the last bit of oils that I add are the ones that are going to be left over and not saponified. So instead of using 12.82 ounces of lye, I'm going to only use 11.92 ounces of lye in this recipe. That way 7% of the oils are left over and are retained in the soap. So what I'll do is I will use the lye water and mix that with the majority of the oils. And then at the very end, I will add my castor oil and my jojoba, because those are the 2 oils I want retained in the soap for moisturizing properties. I always, of course, weigh, and I've got to have a very dry, let's see, I'm gonna let's use stainless steel. Always has to have a very dry container to mix the lye and the water together in. You always want to add the water, the lye to the water, never the water to the lye. that way the lye is being added slowly, and the chemical reaction that's taking place, the gases that it's letting off, is not all at once. So in this, I'm going to use 11.92 ounces of sodium hydroxide. You can see there it's flakes. Okay. Just under 12 ounces of sodium hydroxide. I've got the sodium hydroxide in here. I've got the water in there. I'm going to be mixing the two in another container. So I'm going to move the camera outside and show you how this is done. Okay, so it's really windy today outside. I'm hoping my whole tripod doesn't go over. But I have the water and the lye mixture right here together. Let's lean this over so you can see it a little bit better. So the lye is in these flakes. Always mix lye to water and never water to lye. It's going to take a while for this to dissolve. Now I usually, let's see if you can see this. You see how cloudy it looks? It's starting that process. I'm going to stir, stir, stir. I can see the fumes coming off. Definitely don't want to breathe this very close, so I've got my head out of the way. I'm going to continue to stir until that cloudiness is pretty much transparent again. Right now it's very opaque and the water's very cloudy because the lye is dissolving. I can see smoke coming off of it. Ooh, it's hot. It's hot. It creates a really high temperature. So remember, I started with ice water. Let's just set this down right here. Okay, it's already 140, 160, 170 degrees. So it gets hot quick. It gets hot quick. I don't know if you can see that. So immediately a chemical reaction happens and it's turning into saponified water. Or maybe I should call it lye solution, not saponified water. Lye solution. So it is still, yep, 170 degrees. Now, that has dissolved a good bit. It's still a little cloudy, but you can see it's becoming pretty transparent. And I'm looking in the water and I do not see any sodium hydroxide flakes left. So this will stay right here with the thermometer because it has to cool. I want to make sure that thermometer doesn't fall in. You know what? I'll leave it out. It has to cool at the same time I'm heating up the oils because the lye water and the oils need to be added together when they're within 5 to 8 degrees of each other. So as this is cooling down, the oils are warming up. Now it's pretty much done with its reaction. There's no more fumes coming off of it. I'm gonna bring it inside. I can let it cool down inside. Sometimes I'll even put it in the refrigerator for it to completely cool. But that's only if my oils are almost ready to mix. So I'm gonna bring this inside. The first thing I have to do, I have to go in and I have to rinse this completely and rinse the spoon completely, because that sodium hydroxide flakes that are left on the inside of here can be burning. It can burn the skin. As you saw, that reached 170 degrees rather rapidly. So let me go inside and I will get back with you. Back in the kitchen, I have started the oils melting. Right now I just have the coconut oil and the palm kernel flakes that I am melting together. Let me bring this closer so you can see it. They melt rather rapidly. The coconut oil that I use is a 76 degree oil, and that basically means that when it's hotter than 76 degrees, it's a liquid. When it's colder than that, it's a solid. The palm kernel flakes will melt rather rapidly as well. I kind of have it on high right now to where I can get most of it melted, but now I'm going to turn it down. So you can see it's rapidly becoming a liquid. I'm going to melt these two oils together. I then will add my sunflower seed oil, and I will slowly bring it up to temperature. Now I want to mix these two between 95 and 105 degrees. So my lye water is slowly cooling down. My oils are slowly heating up. And when both of them get between 95, maybe and 103 degrees, I like to shoot for 100 degrees. Then that's when I'll mix them together, and that's when the magic happens. So I will get back with you as soon as these are all ready to mix. I am back. I mentioned earlier about mixing the oils between 95 and 105 degrees, but that's if you're moving really quick and you don't have any essential oils to add to it at the end or any colorants. So usually you can mix them a little bit higher, maybe 110 degrees, which both of mine have hit 110 degrees. I like to put little clips on the end here so that I can fit my thermometer in there and just keep an eye on it and figure out how quickly this is heating up and the lye is cooling down. So it is time to mix. Now I've got my specialty oils set off to the side, and I have my fragrance mixed. I decided it would be easier to do a double batch twice. So I'm gonna make my next batch be the unscented for my mom, which I'll probably do later this week. And this batch is going to be for my husband because he's been begging for it for about a year. He wanted a lavender batch. Lavender is very medicinal in and of itself, by itself, so I always cut it with ylang ylang. Well, I went down to my oils. I'm out of lavender essential oil. The next best thing is my spearmint peppermint blend. Peppermint, again, is very medicinal, and it's really great to cut it with with spearmint. But I was out of spearmint. All I had was peppermint. Well, I had maybe a half an ounce of spearmint. So this is going to be a peppermint patchouli. And obviously I need to, so I've got my peppermint, a little bit of spearmint, and patchouli oil mixed up. So, time to watch the magic happen. Now, you will notice as I add the lye to the oils, a color change that will happen. And I've got it set to where hopefully you can see it. Actually, I put this in a pot of ice to cool it down at the same rate. I mean, to warm it up. It got a little warmer than I wanted it. There you go. All right, so you will see a change in the oil the minute I start adding the lye water. All right, so you can see it'll start turning kind of cloudy. And I want to mix it together. You see how it's turning a little cloudier? I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can turn on a light here. Maybe that'll lighten it up. You see how it's turning a little cloudy? So already that saponification is happening. Starting to happen. So I mix all of the lye water. And I start stirring with a stick blender. This blender goes a little fast, so. See the color changing? Turning more and more opaque. This stick blender moves a little faster than I like. See how it's turning white? Turn this so you see it better. So what am I looking for? All right, it's getting thick. You can see it's getting thick. And I want it to where it leaves a little bit of a tail, similar to if you make fudge, you'll know what I'm talking about. I want a trace of a tail. And that's going to be the thickness where it's poured. But I've got to add the base oil. So I would say probably 80% of the saponification has already happened. Now it's time to add the specialty oils. Now the reason I held out the jojoba and the castor oil is because this is what I want left over after all of the saponification happens. Jojoba has been used by people for years and years for skin and hair. I would say that the oil is probably similar and actually takes the place of sperm whale oil back in the day. It's very, very rich in vitamin E. It's a type of a liquid wax made from the jojoba bean. And then castor oil is excellent choice for shampoo bars because it's moisturizing and reparative qualities, especially for dry and damaged hair. Castor oil is like a natural humectant. It holds the moisture around you close to the skin. So it's a very thick oil and it's slightly sticky. It has a really creamy, frothy, stable lather. So let's finish up with the very last thing I'm going to add is the essential oils, because sometimes the soap will seize up really thickly very fast once the essential oils are added. Now I have my my mold, you can see over there on the floor, all ready to go. And I have a towel laid out because after it's been poured into the mold, it's got to be insulated. I want to constantly take a look at, all right, so this has gotten thick. This is about at the stage I need to add the essential oil in. All right. And then I'm going to immediately pour it. I'm not going to add any colorant to this. I don't know if you can see, but it's like a really thick cream or a pudding. It's starting to thicken up very, very nicely. And that's about the stage you're going to want to pour it. Oh gosh, it smells good. I think that was a good combination, the the mint with the patchouli. It's almost thick enough. All right. I'm looking to see if there's an indentation in the surface of the soap. You want it like a loose pudding with a little bit of a tail. All right, I think it's ready. Still a little loose. Let's do a little bit longer. Now, if I were going to add like kaolin clay, if I wanted to make a shaving bar or ground oatmeal for any type of exfoliant, I would do it at the last minute, put it in at this time, and mix it all up together. If I wanted to add mica for coloring, Fernando and I don't need the bars colored, but sometimes I like to do a purple lavender soap or a mint green mint soap. I have a bar that, there's some oils, fragrance oils and or essential oils that are naturally, all right, I think we're done with this. This should be thick enough. That are naturally dark in color, like a dark amber color. And it's difficult when you're making soap. You can't, it's really hard to color soap when you're starting out in a dark amber color. So those, let's put my towel, I can keep a towel out, get this ready. I have been known to miss when pouring. Anyway, I have a fragrance called Oatmeal Milk and Honey that makes a really dark tan bar. Let's see, let me grab my all right, let's hope this works, huh? So pouring it in. I got a little sloppy. I think I'm going to have a little leftover because I was looking at the recipe and I think this recipe, you see how lumpy it is? I don't know if you can see that, but the saponification is happening rather rapidly. Okay, I do have a little bit left over. This as much up on the top as I can. Fill it up to the top. All right, I do have a little bit left over, but not enough to matter. Might want to cut that recipe by a couple of ounces next time. The great thing about these recipes are that it's an easy cleanup. All right, so I like to cover this with I will often use a cutting board old cutting board, cover it, move these little handles out of the way, just like that. And I'm going to wrap it. And I probably am going to wrap it before it's all over with another towel. The reason I wrap it is because the, let me move this up, the soap now has to cool down slowly. It's continuing to saponify. It's continuing to make its changes. And the slower it cools down, the less apt you are to having a failed batch where the oils will separate. I don't often have that, but so I hear a chirp. That must mean one of my fire alarms battery is going down. Anyway, I'm going to make a second batch, I think, tomorrow after I clean all this up. It's easy. What's great about all this is it's an easy cleanup. It kind of cleans itself. I mean, it's soap, right? And when all this is cured, 6 weeks from now, I'll flip on this camera again and I will film the unfolding process and what it looks like when you take it out of the mold and how to cut it with my soap cutter. So thanks for watching. Bye.